Hi, and welcome back to More Bottle Than Talent with me, Ben Timmons, the racing driver, for a chronic case of having more bottle than talent. This is the final episode in the race report series for the Caterham Academy. Final race of the year, which was at Silverstone International. So Silverstone International was a couple of weeks after the race weekend at Knock Hill, and again you might remember from the previous video, that was a weekend full of ups and downs. I won the first race, didn't win the second race, in fact I barely made it into the second lap. So left there, real mixed bag and a lot of different feelings. But in reality, a big bonus for that, for lack of a better term, was it meant going into Silverstone International, I felt super relaxed. Honestly, the result of the second race at Knock Hill where I was taken out meant that my opportunity to win the championship had dwindled massively.
No cheddar.
And
sorry.
There is the more bottle than talent mascot. So any potential sponsors, I also do pet content. Should you be interested. I felt going into that final race at Silverstone that almost all of the pressure was taken off me. The pressure that I put on myself, of course, no one else is putting on it. But because of that incident and that result, it meant I needed a small miracle in order to win the championship. And that was quite liberating in the sense of I felt I could go out to the final race and just focus on enjoying it, taking in the moment itself, rather than thinking that, I need to do this in order to win. Of course, I still wanted to win, but it meant, the odds were stacked against me, even more than they had been throughout the year. Now, because this was the final race weekend of the year, I opted to do 2 days worth of testing. Not normally what I would do, unless it's a circuit that's miles away like Anglesey. I would typically just do 1 day of testing. But at Silverstone, knowing that the championship was still on the line, there was a small glimmer of hope. I tested on both the Thursday and the Friday. Conditions throughout those test days it was every type of condition that we could have asked for. It started off on the Thursday morning, for example, pouring with rain, and then slowly began to dry out throughout the rest of the day. The Thursday testing was actually on the full GP loop as well. Not the layout that we were racing on, as I said, we were on the international layout. But but half the lap is still useful and half of it is useless for the race weekend. But of course, driving at Silverstone on the GP layout is always an amazing experience, and it was really great to actually see how much faster I was than when I was previously there in May. The times are all consistently a second or more quicker per lap. And again, without a tow, so in clean air. So really great to see that progression over the few months as well. Wrapped up testing on Thursday, felt strong, felt pretty pleased with my pace again in the varying conditions. I felt quite good in the wet, the damp and the dry. And then we went to testing on Friday. Now the testing on Friday was actually on the international layout, so the layout that we would be racing on. First time I've ever driven it, it's not a particularly commonly used layout. And it basically means you're on the loop from turn 1 on the start finish straight at Abbey, and then rather than coming down the Wellington straight, you go straight back onto the Hangar straight. So it's about 1:20 roughly per lap. What was super cool about this weekend is that it meant, because we were racing on that configuration, that we were able to be in the wing, as they call it, which is the layout, the garages, the pit lane, everything that the Formula 1 race series uses as well. So an amazing experience getting to kind of be part of it, living out our own mini version of that. And it was a very different dynamic. It meant all of the cars were in the garages, it was like 6 or 7 cars per garage, so we were all sharing that space. Quite different to the more festival type feel that you would get at a normal paddock in a standard race weekend. As for the actual testing itself on Friday, so the Thursday was an open pit lane, which meant we got loads of running time. On Friday, as is often the way, it's the timetabled sessions, so you go out at very specific times. I think we had 4 30-minute slots that day. And again, similarly to Thursday, all the different conditions. I think it started off dry, first session in the morning, then was pouring with rain, session 2 like a mini monsoon. Third session it was much drier, and then the fourth session it was back to full dry as well. So a real spectrum. And that was really useful because the forecast for the weekend, which had been the talk of our Caterham Academy group chat for quite some time, was honestly chopping and changing every day. No one knew if it was going to be wet or if it was going to be dry, as is always the way in the UK. So it was really good to get the opportunity to test yourself on both circumstances. And overall, I felt strong. I'd love driving in the wet, well, on a track where there's no barriers immediately close to you, but it's great fun. And it's also a really big confidence boost for other drivers to get the car moving about, and it's a great proving ground almost. So in both the wet and the dry conditions, I felt comfortable with where my pace was. I felt consistent, which is probably the thing that I guess has been lacking in all of my other test sessions. I felt fast in bits, but I've been unable to consistently put good laps together. But on this test day, I felt like I was able to do that. My times are within 2 or 3 tenths a lap, almost every lap in the conditions as well. So felt really good on the day. Finished testing, went home, early night, ready to start again on the Saturday, which would be our race day. Saturday we started off with qualifying. I can't even remember what times of the day we were at, but I know we had qualifying, I think late morning. And Silverstone, where it's such a big circuit, even on the international layout, it's so wide, it was always going to be a contest for who would get the best toe. Now again, the slipstream in Caterham, the toe as it's called, is so powerful because the Caterham is essentially a brick on 4 wheels. So the aerodynamics of the benefit from the car behind is massive. I knew that every other driver would be going out into that qualifying session looking to get the best toe possible. And I felt that ultimately most drivers in their pursuit of that toe would be compromised by that. That you're always going to be catching the car in front of you if you're in a toe, for the most part you're going to be. And then that means you're going to have to overtake them, or you're going to lose time from an ideal lap by making that pass for the most part. But of course the benefit of the toe is massive. It can make a driver who's 1 or 2 seconds even slower than another driver, they can keep up with that driver or even pass them because they have so much additional speed from the toe. Now this qualifying session was dry, so I went out with the setup that I tested on the Thursday and the Friday, full dry setup, which was a far more understeery setup than what I had been running in the rest of the year. So you might remember from an angle, for example, I've been struggling with lots of oversteer with the car. So the guys over at DPR did an amazing job of helping me adjust the car, and that was what I tested with, that was what I felt super strong with going into that qualifying session. Now, unlike every other driver, because I knew they were all going to be jostling for position looking for that toe, I went out with the view of just doing my own thing. Go out, get clean air, have as much space as possible, focus on driving the ideal lines, picking my braking points, making sure doing everything that I've been focusing on, making sure that I do it consistently throughout that 15 minutes. If I can get a toe, amazing, of course that's going to help. If I can't, that's the risk you take, you're going to roll the dice. So I went out to qualifying, I think I was one of the first drivers out, pushed past every person that I could, found myself with lots and lots of space, and just was in the zone. 15 minutes just pounding around lap after lap, and the time slowly chipping away. I caught a little bit of a toe from a few slower drivers that I was able to pass going onto the straights, and I did a time, I think a 120 dead, I think was the time that I did, which is around about the current lap record pace. So as we came into the pits, I was there thinking, I've driven that well. I might not be the fastest in terms of net time because I didn't have a toe, but in terms of the actual how I'd driven, I was really, really happy, and I felt like I was going to rank well. I was expecting to be in the top 5. I was expecting people to be faster than me with those that had picked up the right toe. So when I came into the pits and looked at the TSL timing sheet, I was delighted to see that I was second. Again, another front row start. I think Duncan was on pole, he beat me by about half a second, but again, knowing that he might have done that in a toe, I honestly felt, I didn't feel concerned at all. I felt confident and comfortable in the pace that I was able to deliver in that qualifying session. We then have a few hours of waiting around, getting ourselves ready for the race. Excuse me. We then have a few hours of waiting around after the qualifying, getting ready to race in the afternoon. Now in that time, again, the terrific UK weather decided to pour with rain, which meant the first few races of the day, those that were in the late morning and then early afternoon, the races were it was full wet conditions. And then of course it stopped raining, more races, more events, the cars out on track, it starts to dry. And every driver was kind of looking at each other thinking, you know, what am I going to do? Do I run a different setup? Do I run different tyres, different pressures? Like, is it going to be damp? Is it going to be dry? Is it going to pour with rain again? You know, honestly, at this point, no one knew, no one could tell. Just as we were approaching the time to get pulled up to the assembly area, it was quite plain to see that it was going to be a full dry session. Of course, you always run the risk when the forecast is dicey, but myself and I think every other person opted to just run standard dry setup and roll the dice if the rain does come in. We go over to the assembly area, and honestly, it's the most relaxed I've felt in all of my long racing career, in all 6 races that I've done. But it was the most relaxed I felt. I felt there was no pressure on me really to win the championship. No one was expecting me to go out there and to be able to pull this miracle off, because in order to win the championship, I would need to win the race and have the fastest lap, and I would need Tom McEwing, the championship leader, to come third. Anything else, no possible result other than that could make me win the championship. You know, to win and get the fastest lap is tough. I think only Matt Larby has done that this year. Did that at Anglesey, where he just drove off into the distance, clean air, won the race and got fastest lap. But with that lack of pressure, as I said, I was able to feel super relaxed. I spent all of that time prepping myself, the calmest that I've been, just thinking the only result that matters here is, firstly, I come out with a car that is still intact and I don't have an accident. But secondly, that I get out on the other side of this race feeling proud of how I've driven. That was the only thing I wanted. Whether I was first, last, or anywhere in between, I wanted to just get out, having had fun, and being proud of the performance that I put in. That was my benchmark of success. And as we're in the assembly area, everyone takes a different approach, right? Like, I'm always there, my headphones on. I don't talk to anyone. That's not because I'm rude, it's because I just want to focus, and it's a real opportunity to, like I said, to reflect on things, think about what I've got to go and do in this race, but also just a chance for me to block out the outside world and just relish in that moment and that opportunity to be able to go out and race. Again, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to do this for, so it really means a lot to me to take advantage of that time. Now, as we're about to get into the car and we get the final call, Matt Larby, my championship rival, I don't like using the word rival so much, but championship rival comes over to me, and he was starting in 6th place on the grid, so a bit lower than where Matt would normally expect to be. Came over to me, shook my hand, gave me a hug and said, "You better drive off into the distance because I'm going to come and hunt you down otherwise." All words to that extent. And that was a good motivation to think, okay, I've got to do what I can to keep Matt behind me as well. And as you start getting yourself ready, getting into the car, it was a really good moment to reflect. And this sounds so cliche, I know, but being a racing driver is something I've dreamt of forever, and there I am, right, about to go out to my final race of the season, a chance to win the championship, which would never have even been on the cards before the start of the year. And it was a really poignant moment to acknowledge how fortunate and how privileged I am to have that opportunity. And it was also quite an emotional moment in the sense of course, all of those things that I was thinking about. But during the week, my family, we had a pretty tough week, and it meant that people I really care about, my parents, they weren't able to be there for that final race that they were planning to be. And all I wanted to do at that point was just go out and just do the best I could. Go out, be proud of how I'd driven, and try and make them proud as well. We do our lap to the grid, and again, similar to Not Hill, we didn't do a formation lap. Our lap to the grid was the formation lap, which meant you're having to work super hard in that lap to get heat into the tyres and heat into the brakes, so that you have the best possible chance at the start of the race. Pull up into my grid position with Duncan alongside me, just slightly ahead of me in the P1 slot. And I'm getting ready, just setting my timer, sat there, and it was just the most relaxed I'd felt. The lights come on, and normally a wave of nerves would kick in, almost a brief moment of panic, thinking, crap, what's about to happen? I've got to win this, keep the championship alive, blah, 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 all those things. None of that this time around. So the lights come on, and you're just waiting, and it felt like an eternity for the lights to go out. I was thinking, crikey, are they even working? And they go out, and the normal start procedure. Not my best start, I'd give it maybe a 5 out of 7. Certainly better than the one at Knock Hill for the second race, and a damn sight better than the one I had at Donington, so it was fairly average by all accounts. And it meant going into the turn 1, I was able to take the lead. So I'm leading into turn 1, feeling, okay, this is good, this is the start that I needed, I'm in the right position. I know I'm going to get overtaken because that's what happens at the toe, but I've got Duncan behind me, then Ed, and then Tom. And I look in my rearview mirror, bang, Matt Larby. Immediately. I mean, the guy had told me he was going to hunt me down, but I didn't expect it to be within the first 2 corners of the race. So straight away I knew that, you know, the championship battle and certainly the battle for the podium positions of the championship was very, very much on at this point. As we move into the Hanger Straight, I knew, because that's the start of the race, I knew I was going to get overtaken. And I felt at that point it wasn't the right decision to heavily defend that position, because there's the risk of just getting swallowed up by the pack behind you. You know, Caterhams are like flies, they just appear all around you at once. So Duncan Mallet overtook me going into turn 1, and then I thought, okay, well let's just see. As long as I'm in and around the front pack, you know, the front 5, front 6, I'll be confident that I'll be able to make some magic happen. We went by for another lap or 2, I think again a few positions changed. And then on the 3rd lap, I was able to break away. I'd retaken the lead, and I was able to pull out a fairly significant gap. Not massive in the terms of Silverstone, again with the power of the toe, but enough for me to think, this is my opportunity to really nail it and win this race. At Knock Hill, I'd driven a little bit too conservatively when I had the lead. At Silverstone, I told myself, do not make that same mistake. I'm going to push like absolute crazy. And as we came into the start-finish straight, or the Hamilton straight as it's called, I started seeing all these yellow flags getting waved. I was thinking, okay, there must be an incident ahead. But I can't see anything. And I went through turn 1, and the safety car pulls out of the pits. Now, I hadn't seen the safety car board because it was right on the exit of the club corner, and at that point I wasn't looking for it. So I had to slam on the brakes. I thought, that's not ideal. That is my opportunity to drive off into the sunset, gone. Of course, the safety car does mean there's been an incident on track, and sadly it was Ed that was involved in the incident. Ed's a very, very good friend of mine, a great driver as well, and it was, you know, a shame to see that he didn't have the opportunity to complete his race at Silverstone, because the guy looked super quick all weekend. I tested with him on Thursday, Friday. He was absolutely flying in those sessions, certainly the fastest I've seen him drive all year, so a real shame for him. Whilst they were clearing that incident, you know, we had 3 or 4 laps, I think, behind the safety car, quite a while. Now, that is the most nervous that I'd felt probably all weekend, mainly because I've never ever been involved in a safety car on track. The white group, my group that I've been racing in, we only had 1 safety car all year up until that moment, which was at Knock Hill. Now, I wasn't involved in that because I was the reason for the safety car. So I didn't get to go, you know, do the procession of cars and understand, okay, what happens at the restarts and stuff. This has been the thing I've been most nervous about all year, especially being the leader and thinking, what happens if I get this wrong? When do I go? Like, make sure you follow the rules and the protocols. Honestly, it was absolutely nerve-wracking. And I think I made the mistake of getting a little bit complacent when I was behind the safety car and just poodling around. Like, I wasn't thinking necessarily about what's about to happen in the race, because you are just dawdling around like 40, 50 miles an hour. It's really easy to forget where you are and what you need to do. So as we pulled onto the Hanger Straight, I noticed the lights go out, and then my brain flipped back into gear thinking, okay, it's go time now. This means that I need to restart this race. And as we drove down the back straight, I was there thinking, right, what's going to be my strategy? What's going to be my tactic to restart the race? I had Matt Larby right behind me, who I knew was going to just be absolutely, rapid at the gates. I thought my best opportunity for a good restart to maintain the lead is going to be on the exit of Club 1. So coming to Vale, the sharp left-hander, and then the first right-hander of Club. That's going to give me the best opportunity to slow everyone else down, and for me to get the edge on people by accelerating first. Matt read me like a book. He knew exactly what I was going to do. And he was very, very quickly all over me, but fortunately I've been able to just about get a good enough start to maintain that lead for a few more laps. And again, where the safety car had bunched us all back up, the overtaking was of course super frequent. I think everyone was getting overtaken, crikey God knows how many times a lap. So the lead was constantly being chopped and changed about. Now, one thing I had noticed is that I was probably good on 90% of the lap, but certainly going into the final 2 corners of the lap, I was getting beaten. I was getting beaten by so many people, and I just could not seem to get the right, that corner right in terms of maintaining the position. In terms of pace, yes. In terms of maintaining the position, it was something that I really struggled with. So we're back and forth for a few laps, and I was able to hold the lead for the vast majority of those laps. And then we come into the final 2 corners, Vale and Club, and within 5 seconds, 10 seconds perhaps, I go from leading the race to 6th, like that. 2 corners, just immediately drop back. And I looked at my egg timer, and I think it said 3 minutes. And again, it's 1 minute 20 a lap. And it was really reminiscent of what happened at the Grand Prix race that we had in May, where in that same corner I missed a gear and I dropped down the order. I ended up trying to do way too much because I reacted emotionally. I tried to overdrive the car and then I spun and basically took myself out of the race. This time, no emotion, nothing. I looked at the timer and I knew that I had 3 minutes left, so I had 2, maybe 3 laps. And at that point I thought, it makes no difference. Sounds super arrogant, but I knew I was the fastest car out on that track. My pace had been consistent, super strong, my racecraft had been good, and I just thought, I'm coming back through. It doesn't matter, you can all try and stop me, but I'm coming back through and I'm going to retake that lead. And the next lap, I went from 6th to 4th, and then the next lap, I went from 4th to 2nd, and then back into the lead of the race. Now what was really important is in that lap, going from 4th to 2nd, I made firstly the coolest overtaking I've ever done. I overtook through the middle of 2 cars coming into Stowe, and it was like the coolest moment I think I'll ever have as a racing driver. But as we crossed the line, I saw on my V-Box, my timer, that the time that I had done was a 1:19 dead, 1:19.0. That is as close to like my ideal times in testing, and I was there thinking, I think that's it. I think that's the fastest lap of the race. I drove that lap as well as I possibly could. I had a great tow because I had cars in front of me. I think that might be the fastest lap. And as you may remember, I needed the fastest lap and I needed the win in order to win the championship. So it meant it was absolutely, hell for leather going into that, thinking I need to make sure that now I take the lead of this race. However, as I'd set that lap and I'd gone into 2nd place, I'd noticed the last lap board, which I think was early, really, given how much time we had. But either way, it meant we had 1 more lap. And I straight away had a dilemma on my hands. I was in 2nd at this point. In 1st, Tom McEwen. Now, I needed Tom to be 3rd and for me to win in order to win the championship. And straight away I sat there and thought, what do I do now? Do I push and take the lead of the race, knowing full well that I'm going to leave myself exposed to people with the slipstream? Do I sit behind him? Do I try and be a bit more opportunistic and wait for the right time? And ultimately, I thought about it for a brief moment, and then it was clear to me what I needed to do. I needed to be aggressive. My race coach Darren, certainly for qualifying sessions, tells me push and pass, be aggressive, go and take control of the race. And that was what I did. So I took the lead going back into turn 1, and I knew it meant I was going to have to defend as hard as I possibly could in order to maintain that lead. And I also thought back to when I almost tried to do this at the first race at Snetterton, where Tom was in the lead and I was 2nd, and I thought, I'm going to wait for my moment, I'm going to sit behind him, wait for my moment. And my moment never came because Tom was just better than me. And I thought, I can't run that risk again. I need to go out I need to drive as aggressively as I can, fast as I can, take the lead of this race and try and win. And as we come onto the back straight, I'm still just about in the lead. Tom comes up alongside me going into Stowe, we're like wheel to wheel again. And then we're coming into Vale and he overtakes me. And honestly, like I'd spent the whole race trying to think, how do I beat him here? Honestly, I had no answer for Tom's ability to pass me going into Vale that weekend. Inside, outside, like honestly, it made no difference. He might as well have done it in reverse. No matter what I did, he was able to be better than me through that corner and where it mattered. So he overtakes me going into Vale and pushed a little bit wide going into Club. And I know it's just a straight shootout for the line. This is for the race win. It's just a straight shootout for the line. And it wasn't meant to be. Tom was just better than me when he needed to be, and ultimately that ability to pass me time and time again going into Vale was like championship winning in itself. It was incredible how he was able to drive that corner so well. And so we crossed the line second. Tom just ahead of me second. Some chaos over on the left-hand side as Nick and I think Matt came around the corner and a huge shell of gravel came flying about as well. But that was it. Our final race of the Academy Series done. And it meant I hadn't won the championship. And you know what? Didn't bother me in the slightest. Now I'm normally super competitive. I'm very emotional, I have very big mood swings. I'm a bit of a nightmare to be around. So most people probably would have assumed that I was going to be in an absolutely foul mood when I got out of the car. And honestly, when we parked up in Parc Fermé, I got out of the car with a beaming smile because I was proud of my performance. But that was, for me, the best drive, the best performance that I had put on all year. Pace-wise, racecraft-wise, like everything was great. And I felt that on the day, it wasn't enough. And I'm okay about that. So the first thing I did, get out of the car, straight away went over to Tom, gave him a massive hug. I think he looked exhausted. I think we probably all were. It's only a 20-minute race. In the scheme of racing, that's not a lot, but certainly for novice racers like us, the focus that you need is phenomenal. It's exhausting, absolutely exhausting. And just gave him a massive hug. Phenomenally deserved winner of the championship. The guy's been super fast. He's never finished a race not on the podium. No, not a single event. Gave Nick a hug as well, Nick Bright, who was in third place. Amazing to see him get a podium as well, particularly last race of the year. Really great to see new people getting those results as well. Then we did our post-race interviews, and the lovely Sam at Caterham told me that I'd got the fastest lap, exactly as I thought. The fact that I got the fastest lap of a 1:19.0 was great because what it also meant was I had a lap record. And this is the one thing that had eluded me all year. I'd had pole positions at Knock Hill. Pole position, not plural, one. I had fastest lap at Snetterton. I won at Donington and Knock Hill, but I'd never got a lap record. Never got one. So the fact that I had that, was able to get that, honestly, it was just like the little cherry on top. It meant so much, almost as much as the actual as a race win would have done as well. So really great way to top off that result. And so that was it. That was my final Caterham Academy race of the year. It meant that I'd finished second in the championship. After the race weekend finished, I took the car over to the guys at DPR, who immediately got to work on upgrading it to road sport ready for next year. And I'll do a separate video on the road sport spec, the upgrade aspects, that sort of thing, and also what it's like to drive, because it's a totally different beast. But for now, just want to say thank you to everyone who's supported me, whether that's been a like or a comment and a follow on TikTok, Instagram, watching these videos, probably all 2 people that keep watching it. Thank you so much for all the support. Honestly, racing is one thing, but you really realise how amazing the people are that you have around you. The support that you have from friends, family, my wonderful girlfriend, everyone that is so supportive. Like, it is honestly the most humbling thing when you're there at a race weekend and everyone's there, celebrating and congratulating you regardless of what the result is, right? But it is honestly amazing. So thank you so much to everyone who's supported my little channels. And that's it, just like that. My first year of racing done. Caterham Academy Series 2022 in the white group, finished. No, delighted to have finished second place. Never would have thought that would be on the cards coming into this year. And I can't wait to do it all again next year. Next year, the calendar that we'll be racing is incredible. I absolutely cannot wait to get started. So, next year, Caterham Road Sport 2023, I am coming for you.
Ah, look at you, handsome boy! Welcome to my YouTube! For me, Jenna the Retriever!
I'm about 2 foot tall, a little bit hairy, and a little bit chubby. Right, I'm done now, thanks.